Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Jenny from the Chopping Block Recipes for Success. And today we have Eric Balance here with us to introduce this new series that was kind of something I've always had in the back of my mind on something that I wanted to see different similarities to people I look up to in this space. And it's really cool that Eric's our first person that I'm going to introduce to this series because for those of you who prime in the morning with us, we always see him after coming out of the priming in the video. And there's just been so much I feel that I've seen on your social media throughout the last couple of years that seem, I just have questions about that I think could serve everybody. So I just want to thank you for being here with us. And I wrote down a bunch of questions that I just came up. I'll start with I'm going to start simple. How's life going these days with you?
Life is, first of all, thanks for having me. I just want to just say thanks for taking the time. Thanks for, welcoming me on the show so beautifully. And also, yeah, like it's amazing because I always forget that I'm in that priming video and I get reminded of it. And it's like, hey, oh yeah, that's right. And it's like, that was in Australia, that recording when we were in Sydney. I remember it. It was just such a magical experience. I mean, it always is in spending time, but life is good. I mean, life is a gift every day, as long as my heart is beating and I'm still breathing, I'm grateful, and I think that this is the one of the things is, if you're joyful, if you're happy, you're living in heaven, in my perspective. And so this is the thing is, heaven is such an internal sense of self, is like really tapping in to the heart. And for anybody that does priming, and you generate that level of energy in your heart. And to me, it was always like super fascinating learning from the beat of our own drum, like learning from the awareness of our own heartbeat. And I always, like, from that moment on of really generating that curiosity, I made sure that life was going to always gonna be different for me. And yeah, so from here on out, or from there on out, it's been an extreme, like, mystical experience. It's been an extremely awe and beautiful and expressive, um, you know, uh, discovery of myself and the people around me.
Mm-hmm. And I just noticed you like within the community, just always playing like super full out, in a beautiful state and heart centered. Um, yeah.
Thank you. I think life is extremely short. It can happen in a blink of an eye. Like, it can change. And if we're not playing full out, like, my ability to, like, we're told to be so afraid of dying and death, and where we're constantly inundated with fear across society, across societal circumstances, about societal expectations. And I refused to and I still refuse to live in that manner, because real leadership comes from the ability to cultivate and lead by example, of just wanting to, like, really express yourself. And I believe that it's so important to live in this philosophy of beauty and grace and artistic expression and conscious expression and truth and compassion. And having that, if we don't allow ourselves to live in that way, we're only doing ourselves a disservice, right? And I think this is something that so much of society has been, uh, they've been, uh, like, molded, and myself, and I'm saying so much because it was me for the longest time. I was molded to really have so much state of fear and uncertainty. But really, when I realized that certainty is actually an inside job, Certainty is something that comes from yourself. And when you have the courage to go forward and express yourself, you walk into any room and you walk into any state, you walk into any reality or any dimension or any belief system, right? And you create certainty. You walk into something, and that is because you're shining from inside, right? So this is just it's important, I think.
Yeah, and I saw you mention, you're doing your own podcast series that I saw. There was a number of us during COVID, I think. I don't know when you started, but that was like, a big inspiration for myself. And I saw a couple other people doing the same, and how we could learn from everybody and anybody. And I did see something where you talked about sovereign leadership, and I'm just curious to what that means.
Yeah, so sovereign leadership. I had actually a sacred sovereign retreat I held in Ibiza, and sovereign. It was like step into your sovereignty, and this is really beautiful because really, it's always so funny. We create something that we're doing for ourselves, right? And we oftentimes, when we're creating this type of philosophy, it's about what do I need as an individual? What am I trying to present to the world? And it's so beautiful because, like, learning from Tony at the beginning, it was about seeing the mirror of what's my spirit, right? Because we're just one big great mirror. And when we understand this, right, at a very deep internal level, we're understanding that we're just having relationships with ourselves everywhere we go. Because the higher our awareness goes, the more actually we're cultivating with the things that's within us. And so I remember creating the sacred sovereign and like really working on it, really deeply. And sovereignty is about a state of awareness. It's about breaking down the old system of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and really rebuilding it into our own state of reflection of how do we step into a sovereign role as becoming the king or queen of our own reality. Because if I'm present with you, right, enough to actually understand and listen to you, then I understand that you're creating your life. But I can only see that if I take on that sovereign role myself, if I only take on that awareness of myself. And so once we step into this role, this sovereign leadership, right, then we identify, like I said earlier, that we're actually creating the certainty around us. And so once we match that frequency on an internal level, right, we now actually are able to transcend the matrix, if you want to call it, or we could break down, this, three-dimensional level, and we really start to work in a coherent function with our heart's intelligence. And I always talk about, what does heart set intelligence mean? Well, we've been so conditioned to believe in a mindset philosophy. So even the language, right, of mindset, we're setting ourselves in a mind perspective. So whatever we've been passed down based off of traumas, based off of experiences from our parents, or the things that have hurt us in the past, we set ourselves by just saying the word mindset, right? If we start understanding that the belief system around our heart set, there's an internal force of infinite intelligence there. And when we understand that we tap into a heart set, it's a byproduct of actually creating infiniteness. So there's no setting to the only thing that we actually cultivate is an infinite awareness. And so if we tap into this logic, right, because we need logic as humanity to really break down the barriers of our ego. And if we break down the barriers of our ego, tap into through the logical, then we'll listen to our intuitive and emotional intelligence, which is what allows us to create the sovereign role of unifying people around us. And this is what this is why, like, in the past or history, see, like, Caesar or like Marcus Aurelius or kings or queens, right, had this role, let's call it, right, because they had it, and they were expressed as the divine connection between heaven and earth, right? And this was something that in the past people believed in their kings and their queens to take on the realm. But what if we're all the kings or queens of our own realm? What if that was the whole understanding? And so this is something that I really believe in. I think that the sovereign mindset, if we recognize that we're actually the kings and queens of our own realm, then we'll start actually building on that responsibility and start acting like it. And
Mhm.
once we start acting like it, we'll start taking responsibility in what's actually going on in this world and how we can actually start to make a transition to stop being followers and all start to lead together.
Mhm. And I just wanted to ask, because I saw, masculine, feminine energy. If you have anything you want to share about that, talking about like the roles of king and queen, and like something you just want to share that about the different energies that we embody as humans.
Yeah, so I think that the king and queen is within, right? The sovereign role, right? And so it's funny because whether we're male or female, we actually have the masculine and feminine inside of us. And so for those that know me from years ago, when I met Tony, I was like huge. I was on steroids. I was like big. I was super masculine and very like "Rah," you know and so and even in the priming video you can see me as just a different, like my body was like a different perspective. But once I started to really tap into my femininity, my understanding of myself, my awareness, I started to realize where the integrity lies. How can I like start to like speak about integrity and the truth and all of this when I was doing a lot of things that were out of alignment? So what did I need to do? Well, I needed to tap into this like understanding of what it meant to be. What did I learn about masculinity and the toxicity associated with masculinity in society, circumstance, and how can I actually improve that awareness, learning from the people around me, seeing it from the models that I respected, like my father and Tony, right? And understanding this through different emphasis of our teachers that walked the earth way before we did, like different prophets or great teachers that we've all read books about. And I think that understanding this at a deeper level, I started to get really curious as to what did it mean to really have, a truthful heart. And I would remember, sitting there and going into like an experience, and then I would ask myself, what would my mother think if I like responded in this way, or what would my grandmother say? And I started to navigate that internally. And it was super beautiful because then I knew I was actually creating absolute like centeredness. And so we all have this, you see. As a man, we're told and inundated with how we need to like be strong. This is what I believed. Like I really did. I really thought that I needed to be like an asshole or like I didn't know what it really meant. And I remember like even looking at my dad, and like seeing his kindness and his sweetness with my mom, and how his compassion for me as I was growing up, because I went through like a really difficult time uh when I was a child. I got into the wrong people, the wrong drugs, things like this. But it was my parents' love and my father's compassion that helped me see how important it was to really start navigating that from an internal. And I needed more models. So this is where I needed a big, strong model, because I needed something to look at and say, wait, like that's really a powerful um, mirror for me. And Tony, when we were able to connect, it was really important for me because it gave me the certainty that I needed, whether I was on stage at Date with Destiny and expressing myself with like what my mission is, or when he told me, like Eric, you're going to create your own legacy. These
Mhm.
were very key moments in my life that helped me anchor my reality. And because I'm so like, because I'm more aware um, than I was, those are moments I go back to that help me keep driving. I'm a very internal driver, right, of my own reality. And so, because I have tremendous faith in myself and our creator, I know that those moments have been anchored inside of me for a reason. And there's a deeper source. So, going back to the masculine and feminine, now, if we can identify different pieces of our reality and say, hey, what is it in our in our focus, in our determination, in our creation that we really need to go, but how can we finesse that with our love, our nurture, our nature, and doing that within ourselves so that therefore we can actually bring together harmony, bring together kindness, bring together compassion. And to me, this is like a really beautiful dance between the masculine and feminine inside of us, and then we start to actually resonate with the beautiful amazing energies outside of us in that capacity.
Mhm. And with Date with Destiny approaching next week, is your mission and your legacy and the things that you spoke about with Tony still relevant within?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you want
I
to share
mean,
a little bit about
absolutely. So, I mean, since I was on stage with Date with Destiny, you know, my mission was, you know, to be loving and courageous and to empower myself and the people around me. And so this has not stopped since I said that on stage to 2,500 people in Cairns, Australia. I said that, and since that moment, I've anchored it. I've anchored it, and it's something that I go back to in times of difficulty,
that?
in times of uncertainty, in times of things that I don't know where. I put my hand on my heart and I put myself back into that state, and I say, where, how was the feeling? The feeling connects me back to a very deep understanding of knowing that I'm being so guided, because Tony was not feeling well that time when we were in Date with Destiny. So it was the one time that he wasn't on stage and I was. So it was like the universe was showing that I had this energy about me that I could actually really, really energize a whole space. And Tony wasn't next to me at that time because he couldn't be. He was not feeling well,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, this was an anchor. This was a reality. This was something that um, our creator offered to help me understand my own energy, my own power, my own strength. And this is a mission that I've been committed to. It's a mission. It's this is the only reason why I live now. I like this is everything I do and all I talk about, because it's the most important. To me, this is everything. To me, this is why my soul is here. And
Mhm.
so as I've done the deeper internal work, now I'm speaking on stage about it. I'm knowing how to communicate effectively, having the kindness, the softness, the dance of the masculine feminine inside of myself, because it's some of it is a very touching subjects, like these things, whether it's about belief systems or our old belief patterns or things like that. Some people get very triggered. And so how can me as a communicator approach different situations and bring harmony into different, whether I'm in the Middle East or in Brazil or in Australia, or and how can I bring this like compassion into the way that I'm communicating, so that it's done in a way where it brings a harmonious understanding that, hey, that we're all actually the creators and we get to step into this reality together. If we step into a sovereign role, if we step into a responsible role, and if we start looking at the next generation as our opportunity to pass on and literally live in a place of integrity. So what can we do? Integrity is always about How can we leave a person, a place, an experience, a relationship better than we find it?
Hmm.
Well, if we really believe in that level, and if that's our high level of value or highest number one value, then how am I going to leave this planet better than I find it? And if we all start thinking in that manner, perhaps we'll start actually bringing this philosophy or these dreams or this understanding of, hey, we're going to heaven. Actually, why don't we just live in it right now here?
Yeah, I had so many questions come up that I wrote down just within you talking. And you mentioned, I wanted to ask you, uh, what role does faith play in your life? I have one of I think, will man ever stop seeking the purpose of his existence? Right? Are we all here? Like, how come some of us know when we're born, like what we want to do, and then there's some of us that are kind of just following the breadcrumbs and like, figuring it out. Um,
I think I think that that's a two-part answer. So the first part of, like, some of us know, some of us may know, but we have been projected on something from the external and not taught to trust the internal. So the external reality of our life, and it depends on which level of awareness you're born into. You're either oftentimes inundated with the things that are happening at such a huge societal standard that is constantly being projected to you, right? Like what you should be or what you could be, or
also,
rather than recognizing this intuitive internal source of reflecting, right? That, hey, where does the boundary start, right? And so it's very important for us to all realize that, hey, first of all, if something doesn't resonate with you, if it's the feeling, right? If the feeling is, Ray Dalio just posted something that I questioned, because I love Ray Dalio and I love the book Principles, but I question it because it's like, hey, he talks about making sure that everything is enforced with logic. And I understand what he's saying at a very uh, um, a top level perspective, but once you go deeper to that, there's actually a very um, deeper intuitive wisdom that, if you're aware of it, it actually communicates a deeper logic and is amplified through your mental awareness. So to me, logic is the second thing after you understand your intuitive wisdom. So the intuitive wisdom comes from our creator, the feeling. You can't speak logic into something, right? You have to feel it. And so our creator speaks to us, our faith, having this deep internal awareness in our heart, is being communicated to us from the eternal teacher. Okay, the eternal teacher, whatever you want to call it, the name to me is not important. Okay, the eternal teacher, the infinite awareness of intelligence that runs through every single one of us. And if we really believe in the understanding of one belief system, one body, one experience, one essence, it's inside of each of us. This is why the great mirror is in front of us all the time. This is why each person is a student but also a teacher, because you're listening and learning. And if you have enough presence, if you're really present to somebody, and if you're in your center, you actually can listen to our teacher speak through somebody else and teach you something. This is compassion. This is listening. This is paying attention. And so it's very important for us to believe in something that's inside of us, right? We're taught to go into the temples, into the churches, into the synagogues, into sacred places. The most sacred place that we have is inside of us, is inside of our heart.
love
And
that.
so we need to recognize that the golden ratio that's been created in all of these temples and all the synagogues is actually the part of the Vitruvian man, which is us, right? We are the golden mean, right? We are the temple, right? And so if we understand this at a very deep sense, or even at just a little bit of a sense, we'll start to get more curious because we're children. And if we listen to our teacher as children, it's the teachers inside of us all. We're just needing to like just really pay attention. And so this becomes a very curious mindset now. So if you have this innocence, if you have this curiosity, but you also trust deeply in your feeling, your faith, your feeling, your understanding of yourself, your intuitive wisdom will guide you on the path. And so you actually allow yourself to be in awe and wonder all the time, and you having yourself a mystical experience because you see you, as long as you know that masculine force of where you want to go and how you like where you want to go, you don't need to figure out how you're going to get there because everything is going to show up. And so this part is like this breadcrumb thing that you brought, like that's the adventure,
Yeah.
that's the beauty, that's the wisdom, that's the gratitude, that's the excitement. But those dreams, those pieces of you knowing when you were born of like I want to achieve this, or that's that feeling,
You're correct.
that's the feminine that wants to like, and the masculine that wants to make it happen, right? So just trust in that, surrender to it, and give yourself this bliss because you live in this eternal reality. But it's important to be practical about it, right? And this is where Ray Dalio really brings it to life. And he says you make sure that you can enforce it with logic. So what does that mean? How can you effectively communicate it to the people around you so they actually understand you? You know, because you can understand yourself, but there's so many people, you know, especially like my sister, you know, she was told for 20 years that she was mentally bipolar and crazy, but nobody was willing to listen to her. So of course she's going to start to believe that because the reality is telling her. So I got curious enough and I said, no, I know how my sister was raised. I know how my sister is. I know she was the one that spent so much time with me. So I'm going to understand myself enough. I'm going to go do the fucking hard work, learn about myself, and then I'm going to go and be present with my sister. And she's brilliant.
Mhm.
So is it because discusses and says, "Hey, we don't understand something, so we're gonna put something on somebody or a label, right?"
Mhm.
But
Icky.
instead of taking the work themselves, learning about themselves, and then enforcing the logic to really communicate effectively, to really enhance the experience. And this is infinite intelligence. Do you think our creator made any single one of us to be in some sort of um, lost less or anything less than we are? Like we're all infinitely possible of creating whatever we want.
Mhm. And, while we're on this theme, I'm just curious to know if your life has been different from what you've imagined in any way.
So I think that there's a lot of things. There's a lot of mistakes I've made, right? And these are like good mistakes because I wouldn't know what I know today without them happening. And I can tell you that in the last 3, 4 years that I've grown more than I think that I had in the first 3 decades of my life. Yeah. You know, like I just went for it. I went all in, all out, full tilt, let's go. And it was a lot of like successful failures that gave me the awareness that I know that I need to work on or create or change. Do I think that it's different? No, I think it's better, and I think it's more exciting than I ever thought possible. And do I think that where I, am today that I would be? No, I definitely did. If you told me when I turned 30 that I would have traveled the whole planet, spoke on stages, met Tony and really connected with him, and then continued to grow and then do my deeper work to learn from our teacher, like in nature, in private, by myself, with other spiritual masters, I would have never even thought that, because I was so conditioned to be all about like, hey, how am I going to be an effective businessman, right? I didn't think that I was going to take a deeper internal journey, but really it's my curiosity that led me there. And I think that if we all stay curious like this, and open, right, and innocent, because it really is our innocence that gives us this capacity to learn, right? Because I'm the biggest student. There's so many things that I don't know, right? I know that, and I want to learn. I want to know more. I want to get curious about other things, and this is also why the podcast was such a big thing for me, because I learned from other great minds and leaders, because this is how we work together in cohesion. So and for me to have a podcast too, like I'm going on my 134th episode. It was like after 3 years of being live. I didn't think, especially during my travels, to continue it. um no, like my life and where I believe it's headed now, only our creator knows. As long as I'm healthy, I'm happy. And where I want to go now, though, is definitely continue to grow.
Mhm. So I want to ask you, I wanted to ask you while we're still in this topic about like what was an experience that most shaped your spiritual life?
Um, so I think that spending lots of time in nature in Brazil, really being like spending a lot of time alone, was extremely powerful for me, because I started to learn about my intuitive wisdom and my heart's intelligence. And this spiritual experience is something that the silence is just so magical. And when you're listening to water, birds, you know, bees, everything, insects, and you're really becoming a part of the planet. And this silence, you start to understand how what's actually feeling inside of you is happening outside of you. Listen to the connection. You start to pay attention to knowing that, okay, I'm gonna like be in my center, and I'm gonna start to think of something, and then all of a sudden this bird goes by, or you start really being able to listen to something outside of you that is communicating from the inside.
Oh,
And so you start to ask yourself these questions: am I going crazy, or am I just learning something really ancient?
profound. Yeah.
And the more that I started spending my time with myself, and the more I started to learn about this, and whether it was, because now there's so many different medicines too, like that are happening, like whether it's ayahuasca or bufo, or san
Mm.
pedro, all these things. But the thing is those are not those are things that allow you, that they open a gate, right? But you don't need those to open the gate, right? You don't need those at all. You need the power of your breath, and you need the awareness of being present. And if you can be present, you can be you actually can unfold and unlock this deep paradigm inside of yourself. And so the first time I was in Ecuador, I spent time in a temazcal. And in this side, temazcal is like a sweat lodge.
Yeah.
And um, we were doing a very hot, we were on the fourth round, and I was with two elders from Peru and two elders from Mexico. And two pairs, very, very, very intense people, very spiritual, in two pairs. So one elder masculine, and one female, male and female, male and female, from different descendants. So uh and I was on the outside of the doorway, and on the opposite of the doorway, there's the fire, and we were doing like the breath. I was breathing. I was doing my regular breath because it was hot, and this was a very physical, difficult experience. And I blacked out. I blacked out, and I ended up outside somehow. And then I started I was telling everybody we're going to die. Like, we're going to die. And my ego was literally melting. And this was an experience that gave me an awareness of knowing that there's nothing to fear. So essentially, this is like I felt like I was dying.
Yeah, that part of you, or
I felt like I was no I felt like my body, everything was dying. I didn't know what I was going through. I
okay.
didn't understand it. I didn't create an awareness of it. In that moment, though, I felt like I was dying, right? After I came to, I understood and said to myself, what was this? And I started writing about it. And I started getting curious, like, what is this feeling? This was a naturally created feeling from heat and breath work. This was a naturally created feeling that helped me unlock the importance of vulnerability, of trust, of the people around me were like really like taking care of me. And it was extremely vulnerable for me to like be in this state. And it was a very I was almost ashamed at one point because I was like, did I break tradition or something like this? And it was an awakening.
Mhm.
It was a really deep awakening that I was so unaware of that I was waking up. And it was a very profound experience because it was made through the beauty of my own body. It was made through the beauty of the elements. It was made through the beauty of the breath. And so by being around this magic, I realized, well, if this came from inside of me, what am I learning? What was I being offered? What was speaking inside of me? What was talking to me? And I remember in that experience, as I was able to sit down and I go back to the experience, it was something greater inside of me that was telling me, "You're okay. You're gonna be fine. I've got you. You know, you just have to believe that you are the certainty inside of you." And so as I realized this, I realized, wow, like for so long I was kind of speaking this unconsciously, like, hey, we're the creators, but then I realized it from like the deepest sense of myself that there is something that is creating this this deep internal force of me wanting to communicate this. And then it became like another anchor. So you see, in our lives, so many different anchors happen for us to be aware of, but they're unconscious often. And sometimes we don't get to unlearn this unconscious part of us that we've been passed down, so that it's very difficult for us to actually look back at the experience and say, hey, what was my higher self trying to teach me?
Mhm.
What was my higher self trying to um, give me in that moment? And if we sit back and observe, once we become a little bit more aware, we can start to pick up all the lessons that's coming from a higher awareness that's not our own. It's coming from inside of us, but it's coming from something also greater than us. And if we literally just listen, if we literally just listen to some of the past behaviors, past experiences, and we take the moment to listen to our heart, and maybe in situations where we showed up great and maybe situations that we showed up not so great, we can start learning from those experiences and then also apply them, because the embodiment is the important part. And then so as a result of that, that was the anchor of embodiment. So it was like being on stage at Day with Destiny. That was an anchor of embodiment, but this was an anchor of embodiment from inside this experience, in Ecuador. So I know
Was
that was
there
a lot. I
of
know.
surrender?
No, at the beginning I was scared. I was terrified. I thought I was dying. I was so scared, like, I was crying. I was telling people, like, "I don't know what's going on, like, we're dying, we're gonna die, I'm gonna die, like, help me," and people were, like, so loving, like, this was so important for me because it helped me understand that I don't have anything to worry about, you
Mhm.
know? And this to me is like I can go back to that moment and I can just feel it because it was such an important part of me understanding. So many people didn't know who I was or didn't meet me. They met me for the first time like a day before, but yet the love and the compassion and the kindness
Mhm.
and me being like terrified.
Mhm.
This is something that you realize it's the most important thing. And if you can come from this state of awareness and you can come from this state of like, you know, there's something greater inside of you, you can deliver from that level of strength. You can deliver from that level of responsibility. And if we all just took a moment to identify and say, hey, we can be here together. And it was like once people around me helped me to identify I'm okay, it
Mhm.
was like I could then surrender. I could then relax.
You're not alone.
I was terrified. I was terrified.
And I wanted to bring in the surrender because, I'm working through my own surrender experiment and
Yeah.
with a group of beautiful people that are on a similar journey, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to highlight your balance, right? Because a lot of times Michael Singer talks about how he went into solitude and he never wanted to come back. And he didn't want to be with the people that unconditionally loved him, maybe strangers that came to the temple to just meditate with him every Sunday since he started, right?
Yeah.
And if I could just ask you where the balance is
Yeah.
within the two spaces, because who would, I mean, you go into even master closed meditations, you don't want to come back. So where
This
is the balance?
this is very important. And it's so funny that you say this because I think the other day, people are like, why did you leave, here? Or why did you leave Brazil? Why did you leave Spain? Why did you leave all these other places? And it's beautiful. You're right. There's a blissful state of being in this awe and wonder of feeling the magic that you have connected with, this internal state of awakened soul, right, that you've become. And you really realize, hey, like, this is really an amazing state to be in, and I could, like, play here, and I could dance here, and I could be in eternal bliss. But what's my role? What's my responsibility if I really want to be in this state of integrity? you know it's easy to be on the mountain, right? It's easy to be there in the quiet solitude. But what about if we really believe in the state of integrity of, like, hey, that we're here together and we're all one? Well, how am I delivering my awareness to the people that need it? Or how am I leading and not using my being, my life as a force for good, a force for responsibility, as stepping up as a leader and saying, okay, now it's time for me to go out there and express consciously the importance of this awareness. How can I communicate it more effectively so people understand it, and more importantly, understand it?
Yeah.
And so to me, it was about, now I need to get off this mountain and I need to really, whether it was internally or in Brazil or whatever, both physically and metaphorically, get off the mountain and say, it's time to go to work. It's time to really bring this awareness into all other dimensions. The Dalai Lama, they say, like, the Dalai Lama, is like a bodhisattva, right? And bodhisattva, what it means, it's like the combination of wisdom and compassion. And it's the eagle that flies between all the worlds, right? Between heaven and earth. And so many of us, when we tap into this level of intelligence, we become the bodhisattvas. So we now have a responsible role in this reality to communicate and bring this awareness to light here. And so it's important for us to dance between all the dimensions, and this is the ability to fly between all 8 dimensions. Once you reach the 8th dimension, you can now start to fly between all, and there's many more, but it's important now to fly between all and be able to communicate. And so now, looking at another person's map of the world, how can you be sensitive and compassionate enough and loving enough and aware enough to understand, hey, that's where I was at one point in time. And so now you're able to communicate in a way that's not like, hey, you need to do this.
Mhm.
It's about actually embodying a beingness of awareness that says, hey, okay, what can I do that will help them maybe see something in themselves, or maybe I can ask the right question, or maybe I can express my own experience or something like this. Because I really believe that everyone's doing the best with the knowledge that they currently have.
Mhm.
And so it's important for us to be compassionate to people, because they don't know what they don't know. And if they don't know what they don't know, then it's our duty and our role and our responsibility to come from this solitude space and say, okay, how can we now help you find the path, or at least help you pave one, or just come and illuminate a one that might work for you and resonate. And then you can take what works for you and then kind of make your own decisions. But
How
at
would
least, be guided. Sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say, how would you be that guide? Is it by being and or is it like just
Me,
offering little suggestions
me
or
personally,
yeah.
or are you saying, so for me personally, it's about speaking on stage. It's about sharing, these different philosophies. I have different experiences, like seminars and teachings that, I ask questions, and how people can go through their own expressions of really illuminating. Because, I always said to Tony, I said, Tony, I'm going to carry on your legacy. And he says, no, Eric, you're not. You're going to create your own. You'll see. And to me, it's actually very empowering to be on a stage and speaking just like Tony did. This is what I loved about it, right? But I'm not Tony, and I don't need to be Tony. I'm Eric.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be Tony, but I do want to create the same sort of platform. And so, to me, it's the continuation of the big platform of wanting to speak online or in person on these stages, because it's about helping people identify. And so, how do we create a very safe space? So this is what I loved and admired the most, is like when I talked in front of 2,500 people or 1,000 people, I feel comfortable in holding the space for somebody else to share. And this is something that I really learned from Tony, because there's not a lot of people that can hold a space. There's actually, I don't think there's anybody that can hold a space quite like Tony can. And the way, and when I'm saying holding space, when I think of holding space, I think of holding the planet, right? But when we're holding space in a room, right, we're holding space for people to be safe, right? And so this safety, right, it's created in a whole room. So when Tony is holding the space, he's just there as a vessel, as a channel, as a communicator, right? And he's holding the space for somebody to tap into their own intelligence, right? He's asking the right questions, he's communicating effectively, he's paying attention to all of the language, right? Not just the verbal language, but all the different kinds of communication, right? He's listening way more than all of us think. But when you're starting to really be present to Tony, and the way his eyes move or his head moves, or I was starting to identify ways that he was actually listening, but also what he was receiving. I could start hearing it by what he was receiving, the way that he was channeling. And so he's very aware of what he's doing, and it's very intuitive. He's guided there by some like small things, to keep him like in flow, like in a state of, but he's very guided from an internal sense of knowing. And he's done this for 4 decades. So, there's a deep knowing, right? And so I know what he's embodying, because I feel that as a result of seeing it, and then now being able to hold the space so comfortably myself, I will continue to do that, and I will continue to, you know, learn from the, the giants of, teachers like Tony, and also adapt from the eternal teacher of what I see as the great mirror around, to bring my own essence regularly to it, right? And so this is how I see moving forward for me. I'm writing a book right now about the conscious revival, the deep internal path of abundance, right? And how we can really create that. And you know I'm being invited to a couple different summits to speak, and this is the pillar that I plan on delivering at a very international level.
Love it. So I have, I do want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on the hour, but I do have a couple more questions if you
Please.
don't mind. So I wanted to ask you, first, like it's been something that's been coming up because you mentioned like your view on business before you got into, personal development, and that was your driving force. Like you wanted to be, in that. I don't know what it was that you were going for in business, but what does spirituality have um, in relation to business? Because through business mastery, I don't know if you attended or you
Yeah, of
got it
course.
from that, but what does he mean by like business is a spiritual game, and how
Yeah.
have you applied that to your own life?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think that business is a spiritual game. If we recognize that life is a spiritual experience, business is a spiritual experience. If everything that we do is in the terms of bringing our awareness to our passion, our mission, then it becomes a way that we can actually receive value and also exchange value. And so when Tony says business is a spiritual game, he means like he's tapping in he's tapping himself into his own deep mission and learning also how to receive but give. So there's an exchange of value. So we all pay in business for something, right? The energy exchange of money, whether you believe in money or whether you don't, it doesn't matter. It's the reality, it's the practicality of it right now, of the way that business is, or energy is exchanged. And so what we need to do is we need to be a very realistic in the terms of practicality, because there's a lot of unrealistic terms. And I don't really like the word realistic, because everything that we create can be very unrealistic and be created. But practical. So practical, how can we exchange value and create abundance, as following our heart? And abundance can be in the form of many things. But one thing that we need to be practical about is having money, is having a business, is having entrepreneurial skills. And of course there's tons I need to learn about how to build a bigger, better, more beautiful business, right? But business as a spiritual experience is really something that we'll start diving into as way more sovereign people. So people of sovereignty will recognize that, hey, my business is actually a responsibility of me to really give the value, so that I'm actually changing the trajectory of people's lives. And as a result of changing the trajectory of people's lives, I'll also get to receive this beautiful energy called money, or abundance. And this is something I think that people oftentimes forget, is that if your soul is calling you to do something beautiful, you have a moral responsibility to really provide that value. And then you also have a moral responsibility to receive. And this is something, when you're able to receive this power, you're able then to amplify yourself into a new reality. Because like Tony, he wasn't always the name he is today, right? At the beginning he started in a different way, and he has a ton of his own great stories about the way that he's learned from trial and error. And we all, myself in life, I've learned from so much error. But this is the gift, is like you keep going full out, you keep knowing. And I remember Tony saying, when he gave his last little bit for to a guy in a restaurant, or a little boy in a restaurant, and he said, "Oh, I'll be fine." And I can tell you that there's so many times that we make those decisions of saying, "Hey, like we may not have all the money in the world right now, but let's just, like, it's our soul that just ignites. And so we know that everything's going to attract the right way because we have so much deep trust in
Mhm.
our creator. And I know that that's a deep understanding of just really letting go and surrendering, which is what, Michael Singer really talks about in his book. So this is something that we can start doing all as conscious entrepreneurs and stepping into this like business as a spiritual journey, because if we're consciously adding value to our ecosystem and our economy, and we're asking the difficult questions, and we're doing something that is actually as a force for good rather than just attaining money, we'll attain money anyways.
Mhm.
It will come.
Mhm. And while we're on the restaurant topic, I do want to ask, were you referring to the story where Tony was kind of down and out, and this was like the beginning of his
Yeah.
rebirth into believing that he could do it and have it, and he gave the kid money to treat his mom for
Yeah.
lunch when he had nothing, and then he gets home and he has a check waiting for him of money that's owed to him.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful story, and
It's a very pivotal one, and I
thought
have to
about
say,
that.
like, if we
Yeah.
all started seeing things like this in a very deep way, everything is in a deep way. I keep saying that, but um, if we start uh, like recognizing that we are going to receive everything, that we don't need to force it,
Mhm.
because I was forcing a lot of things in my life for a very long time. And Dr. David Hawkins talks about power versus force, and it's very important to really, really cultivate. Do you
I
have the book ready?
copies of it.
Amazing, yeah, such a great book, right? And he has a couple others that are very good. The Eye of the Eye and the Eye. It's like a very high frequency book as well. But my point here is about forcing everything is really not necessary when you know at a deep internal world who you are. And when you know at a deep internal world who you are, the power starts to amplify and it starts to come to you. You become the magnet. And so this is now something that is it's a very deep practice. And this is the surrender that Michael Singer talks about, is once you tap into that surrender, into that knowing, things just start to show up because you know already who you are.
Mhm. Okay, so I have two more questions, and then,
Please.
of course, anything that's on your heart. But just to close up this interview, that was just amazing. I'm so happy you started this series with me. Um, can't wait to rewatch and hear some stuff differently too. Is what's your favorite food? And then I also wanted to know, what's this event coming up in Dubai? What brought you to Dubai, and are you excited about it? What's it about? And then, of course, anything that's on your heart that you want to share.
Yeah, so my favorite food, I have so many, but I have to say, honestly, I love anything homemade. I love homemade food. My it's beautiful to be back, like with my around my grandma, my mom. When it's made with the heart, it really, like, I love all food, but like when it's made with the heart and it's made from the people that love, like, I could everything at home. I eat up, like it's magic for me because it's done with such intention. Not saying that when you go to a restaurant, it's not done with your heart. It's just different.
Mhm. With love.
So
What's
yeah,
your grandma's specialty?
I mean, there's this they call it flaki in Polish. So it's like it's very amazing. Or like schnitzels.
Ooh,
Like pork.
that's yeah, I made that for my
Yeah,
dad's birthday.
yeah. So really love that too. So and the event in Dubai. So the AIBC summit. I don't know all the details still. I'm still waiting to get all the details, but it's in March. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of great experience, a lot of great people there. Gary Vee will be there. A lot of good amplified like kindness, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, it's going to be something that I think is going to take another level in my own life. I know this, and it's just about really being excited because all of these things, they're so magical, and it's all happening already for me. And these invitations I'm very humbled by, and things that are just like slowly happening. And I'm just being me, you know. I'm not trying to force anything anymore. I used to for a very long time, but now it's just about how can I add and contribute as much value as possible, and just being who I am. And you know, the universe will look out for me, whatever the path that looks like. It will be one that allows me to be in my full sense of expression.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate you. And sister to brother, I love you. I appreciate you. I can't even express to you how much this means to me, and I'm sure our gracious community. And I'm wishing the best for you. I can't wait to hear more of your journey and watch your journey as you expand more and step more into your power and highest self.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for bringing me on. It really is meaningful. And for anybody that's listening, you know, just keep following the heart. I think that this is the most important intelligence that we have. And, you know, we've been conditioned for so long to just follow the mind, but the heart is really where the intensity, the passion, the curiosity, the innocence, the kindness, the compassion come. And uh, yeah, give yourself this gift, because you're the only one that can do it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I know I'm excited for mine, and I will see you real soon.
Thank you. See you later. Thank you so much. Bye.